Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Rich. So for anyone out there that's interested in gaming on the M3 MacBook Air, I just have to ask the question, why? Just get a Windows machine, bruh. The support and gaming library is way better over there. However, if you are very curious like me and want to know how games run on this little guy, it is possible. But just how possible? So I have the M3 Air set up right here. I have it charging via USB-C 140 watt output. This is a lot of power input, so I'm confident that we'll be up to speed here. I also connected a USB-A dongle with a receiver to use my Razer Basilisk Ultimate Gaming Mouse. It's wireless, which is nice as I don't have to worry about cable drag, and just looks way cleaner that way. For me, I like the claw grip design, the side buttons feel ergonomic, and I also put some grip tape over it. Overall, it's a dope looking mouse for both gaming and working. First off, I highly suggest that you go with a higher tiered M3 MacBook Air if you are going to be doing stuff like this, with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of SSD storage. It's crazy to think how Apple is still able to sell consumers base model MacBooks for well over $1,000 in this day and age. 8 gigs of RAM is really only enough for casual computer usage and internet browsing. When it comes down to making spreadsheets, using other Office programs, and getting into content creation, the Mac is going to slow down noticeably. Throughout this video, I'll show you the thermals, I'll show you some gameplay and all that good stuff. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start off easy. Minecraft. I'm sure this was everyone's favorite game at one point or another. Loading up into the game took around half a minute and a few seconds more for the rest of the map to load in. As you can see, all the settings were set to max, which included the render distance at 32 chunks. That way I was able to see the furthest distance on the map. The frame rate was running at a constant average of 50, with just a few minor hiccups and freezes every once in a while. As you can see here, it's not perfect and there were still a lot more areas that needed to be loaded as I was flying all around in creative mode. I think as long as you're not mass planting a behemoth of TNTs and setting them all off at once, I think the gameplay experience here is relatively smooth. Minecraft surprisingly looked very rich and detailed coming off of this 13.6 inch Liquid Retina display. Couple that with their P3 color support and True Tone technology, everything from the grass blocks to the cows or the pigs looked vibrant. And even though these MacBook screens are still 60 Hz, I mean, I guess that's alright. I think playing Minecraft on the M3 Air felt very comfortable and humble. I like the form factor as it really isn't an intense game and just something about playing it on this small screen just really feels good. Next is Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. I've been having a lot of fun with this game for a few years now. To me, it was a perfect pastime game if I was at the library waiting on my next classes during school, or if I wanted to play around with some late night shenanigans. It's a ragdoll physics-based battle simulator where players are given a limited amount of in-game money to build an army to defeat the enemy force, and it's hilarious. I think this is a good game to illustrate why you need at least 16 gigs of RAM today, because when it comes down to placing your troops, the Mac is going to need to compute all of those things. From the graphics to the shadows and physics, and just the sheer amount of content in this game is already heavy enough. I'm using a menu bar app called Stats for the Mac Update website, which can display CPU, RAM, and SSD readings. So right here, the CPU is running around the 160 to 170 degree Fahrenheit average, which translates to 70 to 87 degrees Celsius. You can see that we also pretty much exceeded 8 gigabytes of RAM here since we're sitting around 9.5. Now, if you do go with a regular base model M3 MacBook Air, I mean, you can still technically run these titles on here, but I don't think you'll be having a good time since they'll probably run around the 10 frames per second mark. Because once you hit the limit of 8 gigs, the Mac will start using the internal solid state drive as what's called swap space, and as fast as those SSDs are, they're simply not as fast as the RAM. But anyhow, I have this game on max settings with max resolution. The motion blur and shaders look really great on here. Towards the end, I wanted to take it up a notch and start spawning in a bunch of troops. You know, ones that had bombs to make the game go boom and dragons with flames to really push the M3 Air. And yeah, it started to get a little laggy. Nonetheless, the laptop was able to plow through all that work and still come back as smooth as ever once the dust settled. Next is War Thunder, which has pretty good support for macOS. I went into terminal and launched the Metal FPS HUD command /bin/launchctl space setenv space mtl_HUD_enabled space 1, which I'll post that command down below so that you can try it out. But basically, it opened up some information about my game. I launched into a tank session as I believe the details would be a lot more intense down there. The gameplay was very smooth on here at high settings at an average of 45 frames, and honestly, I was shocked. The details in the warfare to the fires of tanks blowing up were all very smooth. It looks like your boy still has the skills because I was taking out players left and right. Alright, if you're ever trying to go against me in PC games, you might want to reconsider. There's also this webcam notch which I noticed right up here. I think it's kind of weird. It's kind of blocking the menu bar, but hey, what can you do? Now, we're going to take a look at Baldurs Gate 3. It's definitely a popular game. The Steam charts have been going off since this came out. I think this is probably the best RPG to test as there's so much content and details in the game. So this is where the M3 Air started to struggle a little bit. While playing on 1080p settings, the game was averaging around 22 to 28 some frames per second, which in my opinion feels a little bit choppy, as you can see right here. There are a lot of things going on in this game, like the sheer amount of content on the screen, so I was really hoping the Mac could push through this. Eventually, I did bump the resolution down to 720p, so I was getting high average of 35 frames, so the game was a little bit more enjoyable for me. I mean, it didn't look all too bad. The temperatures were still around the 170-degree mark, so I think the M3 chips are running very efficiently since they don't have any fans either. And oh my goodness, I don't think I ever played on a laptop without hearing a single fan noise. This was virtually quiet. You gotta love these Apple Silicon chips, but I just hope there was better game support on Macs. Alright, GTA 5 on the MacBooks, baby. You'd never thought it came to this, huh? I'd argue this was one of the most influential video games in the world. The pop culture that surrounds this game is still so strong today. If you're wondering how I'm running this, I downloaded the Crossover app, which translates Windows commands into Mac commands so that you can run Windows software as if it were assigned native to Mac. It's not an emulator. There's a 14-day free trial which I used, and after that you can purchase it. I re-downloaded the Windows version of Steam and got GTA 5 running, which was over 100 gigabytes. Now, while GTA 5 is an old game, approximately 10 years now, which is almost a decade, it does test a lot of machines till this day. Rockstar developed their own proprietary advanced game engine, also called Rage. Is absolutely mind-blowing and still holds up super well years later. Everything was turned to default settings with a resolution of 1080p and frame rates were averaging around 45. Not gonna lie, I was having a pretty good time. The experience on here was very smooth. I didn't crash at all for the past 3 hours I played. And lastly is CS2, or CSGO as many of us would know. I found that it ran the best here. When it comes down to competitive FPS, the M3 Air's keyboard felt very snappy and enjoyable. I can really fly fast on the MacBook Air keyboards. They're just so nice to use. The game was running at a constant 60 frames per second on high settings at 900p resolution, so I felt good here. There were no hiccups or lag spikes, no signs of slowdowns, and surprisingly, the Crossover app did a good job. It's not sponsored, by the way. Crossover is really the only way to play games at close to native performance. Sometimes you did have to tweak the settings or update to the latest Molten VK to get maximum performance, but the compatibility was smooth for me with most selected titles. Ultimately, gaming on the M3 MacBook Air was pretty enjoyable. I honestly didn't think it'd be possible to run that many games on this machine. Apple advertises that the M3 Air is around 60% faster than the M1. I already thought the M1 Air was fast enough for most people. I made a review on that super long term, which you can watch around here somewhere. After playing on this for a few weeks now, I haven't crashed in game, which surprised me the most because we know Windows sometimes has a bunch of errors with games and stuff not working. So yeah, it was really smooth, but just go with the 16 gigs of RAM version here. I know it's really pricey. I mean, spending an extra $200 for just double the RAM is pretty criminal today, but that's Apple's usual strategy. So, you already know the drill. Hit that like and subscribe button and tell me anything down in the comments below. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.